This segment of the news is brought to you by Sun Oil Limited.
Welcome back. Sky Bahamas recently ordered to vacate the space it was occupying at the Lyndon Pinley International Airport since 2013. The Bahamian-owned airline, according to Bahamas Civil Aviation Authority Director General Captain Charles Bannaby, was court-ordered to leave. The BCAA insisting that the authority had nothing to do with that turn of events.
There has been a lot of chatter publicly on matters related to Sky Bahamas, most particularly a court order, an injunction that was granted, and that injunction caused Sky Bahamas to have to cease its operation and vacate premises attached to a lease that they had with the Nassau Airport Development Company.
The two agencies are in no way connected, as the BCAA regulates the civil aviation industry and the Nassau Airport Development Company oversees the day-to-day operation of LPIA. Now, Captain Bannaby says the claim that the authority somehow shut Sky Bahamas down and prevented them from continuing its operations is unfounded. Citing tough economic times, Sky Bahamas occupied Terminal A at LPIA when it relocated its operations from the Blake Road Plaza. Well, on schedule and in some instances ahead of schedule. The timeline Education Minister Jeffrey Lloyd shared with reporters when asked about school repairs as the clock ticks on the start of the new academic year. 3 weeks to go, and Minister Lloyd says repairs are practically 75% complete on 9 New Providence schools that were in a critical state.
Because of the nature of the repairs and because of the time frame, that is why we were very, very, very selective in those contractors. People who are capable of doing it, who can mount the required resources, who didn't need mobilization in order to get started. And those 9 contractors, very experienced, have worked for the Ministry of Education, the government, and the Ministry of Work over many years. Very experienced, very capable, and that's why they were chosen to execute this critical work. And I can assure you, you can go and visit. Many of those schools were in such a dire straits in terms of disrepair that they were a safety threat to our people.
What about schools in the Family Islands?
Same thing, schools in the Family Islands. We did get a late start in Exuma, but fortunately the contractor there is very capable also, and he is well on his way to completing.
Infrastructure aside, the ministry is also looking to improve the school's curriculum.
As you know, one of the items on the agenda of the Free National Movement's government in education this time is a reformed curriculum. That is very much underway, and obviously all subject matters are under review so that it can be relevant for the 21st century, and family life education is one of those. So absolutely, we are looking at everything involving reproductive health, particularly in an era where there are so many sexually transmitted diseases, but other varieties of incidences involving sex.
The 2019-2020 academic year begins September 2nd. A local environmentalist is using the tourism minister's words against him in the standoff between the government and Compass Point owner Leah Rodney. Mr. Rodney has threatened to close his West Bay Street business if the government does not improve the ease of doing business. But both the minister, Dionisio Diagler, and Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis has said they won't be bullied. Well, Re-Earth Sam Duncombe penning in a recent OPED piece that if Minister Diagler is serious about pushing back against bullies, maybe he should take another look at the Lighthouse Point deal. Disney Cruises proposes a multi-million-dollar development at the sacred site in South Eleuthera, despite much pushback from environmentalists and conservationists who some weeks ago launched an online petition against the project. Mrs. Duncombe charging that not once did anyone in government accuse Disney of bullying, even when the company, on the eve of the government's decision on Lighthouse Point, threatened to pack up and go away if the project was not approved. Further, no one accused Disney of bullying when it insisted on concessions of no taxes of any kind on any form of revenue generated from the project for at least 20 years, no import duties or levies on any materials related to the project, no real property taxes for at least 20 years, no obligation to improve local infrastructure. In fact, she argues that the company was given the right to build its own private power, water, and sewage plants. The environmentalist goes on to point out that Disney has discretionary authority to determine the number of Bahamians hired, the number of vendors vendors allowed on premises and the type of goods they can sell. Monopoly on food service and various other activities. No prohibition against what she called penny pinching commissions on tour operators, and no meaningful contribution to workforce training. So Disney then will be free to use its onboard credit system, she said, to control financial interface between its passengers and local vendors. Well, it's not often any government gets high marks from its opposition, but that's exactly what opposition deputy leader and Ragged Island MP Chester Cooper recently saw fit to praise the Minnis-led administration for finally addressing some of the needs of its people 2 years after Hurricane Irma battered and bruised that far-flung family island. Soon after assessing the damage and destruction there, Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis made the promise to transform Ragged Island into the first fully green island, while Bahamas Power and Light recently announced that work on implementing its first solar and battery storage solution is set to begin within days on that island, and that a U.S. company, Salt Energy, had been selected. The project, when completed, will produce in excess of 90% of the energy requirements for Ragged Island. Mr. Cooper has taken a wait-and-see approach. He questions, though, why the project will only cover 90% of the needs of Ragged Islanders, when he says there are not so many people that the other 10% should prove difficult to cover. That ends this portion of our news. Stay with us for a check on sports.
This segment of the news has been brought to you by Sun Oil Limited.